and welcome. My name is Elizabeth Keach. I am from Detect Nerd.
I'm Doug Miller, also from Detect Nerd.
Yeah, and we're here with Jon Sideriadis, illustrator, author, creator of the world of the Astromythos. We are so excited about collaborating with Jon. He's released a module called Lair of the Spider Lord based on his original setting. So we, as Detect Nerd, will be kind of bringing it to life with an actual play, role-playing game series on our YouTube channel. So thanks for being with us, Jon.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
How's it going?
Why don't we just start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself, maybe, and then let's just start with that.
Oh, sure. Well, I do a little bit of teaching, a little bit of this and that. I used to teach full time as an illustration professor, but now I teach one class a week, and I mostly spend time, taking care of my 7-month-old son, and writing and illustrating books and things, and sometimes doing freelance work for tabletop games.
Cool. And for those that aren't familiar, if you want to give like a brief description of Astromythos in your own words, it'd be great to hear.
Hopefully it's brief enough, but I tend to be long-winded. It's basically an illustrated cosmic fantasy series written in heroic verse, like an epic poem, sort of like the ancient Greek and Viking sagas. I apologize if I'm a little wheezy or I cough because I have a little respiratory infection, but I'll be fine in maybe a week or so. It is a story about anthropomorphized stars that battle evil forces called photovores that wish to rid the universe of its light. So those are the villains. Basically, the photovores are these giant spider stars. So they bleed vacuum or black holes. So when they're killed, they become black holes. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. It recalls the Alien sort of thing, where if you kill one, it bleeds acid. So its blood could kill you too. So it's a little treacherous. But book 1 is a new mythology with the original story that basically contains the creation story of the stars, of beings like red giants, white dwarfs, comets, meteors, vampire stars, pulsars, and magnetars. Just like the anthropomorphized versions of those, their origin stories. Humans and other terrestrial creatures enter the story in book 2, basically, in Lair of the Spider Lord, of course, which is based mostly on book 2 and a little bit of book 1 in the pantheon there.
Awesome. Yeah. We've been diving. So I have the Lair of the Spider Lord right here. It probably is going to be flipped, but it's still cool. It's cool and very little, but mine's already getting pretty worn out. So, but yeah, we're super excited to have jumped into this just absolutely just astronomical world and setting. It's been an immense pleasure to kind of deep dive into Jon's brain. This is like such an interesting world. What kind of put you on the path to creating this world?
Okay, that's a good question. It's a tough one, but I think I was always interested in making stories and art. I spent a lot of my childhood in the woods catching newts and salamanders and frogs, playing with my 80s action figures, bringing my G.I. Joes and making my own stories that oftentimes didn't have anything to do with the lore in the cartoons on Saturday mornings. Mm-hmm. And, my mom used to read me books when I was a kid. My favorite were actually my Greek mythology books, like the story of Theseus and Hercules and characters like that. Actually, my son's name is Theseus. Because that's how obsessed I am with Greek mythology. And it all ties in, mythology and the D&D and Tolkien and all the things that we love. So, just like everyone else, I grew up with these things, and after taking my first astronomy course in college, or during rather, sorry, I remember doodling and sketching, and I have ADD, so I was always doodling in class and failing at Greek school. Excuse me. So I was sketching in that class, in my astronomy class, and I started sketching like an anthropomorphized yellow dwarf and like a face for a red giant, and that really sparked my imagination. And then we had to take a field trip to the Boston Science Museum, or just the city where I went to school, and we saw the Horsehead Nebula. And instead of a horse head, I saw like a person walking, like a bearded celestial person walking in space. And I thought, why not turn these characters into myths and mythological characters and stories? So I became the narrator of my series, the protostar, who was cursed to never turn into a full star after his father ripped his heart out. So that's basically, I don't know if that's a good answer, but
no, that's a great answer.
Yeah, it is.
That's what put me on the path. Yeah.
So how long? I guess how long have you been working on like Astromythos in total, pretty much?
Since the year 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So about 25 years almost now.
Wow.
Yeah. It took me, I think, about 20. It's a good question. It took me 20 years to from the first sketch to getting Astromythos book 1 in my hands. Because I had to invent the mythology, the characters, the story. The story is completely original. Mm-hmm. I had to come up with everything, the character designs. I had to learn how to write because I went to school for illustration. So it took like about a decade just to learn how to write and develop a style that I was comfortable with, that I thought was publishable and professional.
So did you start out mostly with the drawings, and then from that we're like, okay, what are the stories behind these drawings?
Everything started with the drawings, yeah. And I look back at them and I cringe, but some of my little high school drawings, and I started creating my own characters in middle school when my mom took me to like art classes, and the teachers there encouraged me to draw my own characters. I thought that was really fun, but it's such a huge challenge. But everything started with the drawings, and they started to develop stories like the sketch I did in my astronomy course. And then now, it's backwards. It's everything starts with the story, and then I choose what to illustrate. So it all started with those sketches because that was my skill. That was what I was, going to school for. And I was always drawing like little Marvel comics cards and, the 80s and early 90s. And How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way was my favorite how to draw book. And those always, ever since I could hold a pencil in my hand, I would always love to draw and paint.
Well, your work is absolutely phenomenal. I remember when we met, it was you were in Artist Alley, right, at Gen Con, is that correct?
Yeah, I go every year. It's my favorite show.
Yeah, and that's where we met. And I remember being stunned, of course, by your artwork. It was just like stunning, and it did stop me in my tracks. And so I just really love that the style that you use. Do you use like different medias? I saw that you like made your own, like, was that paper that you were making, that video that you posted, or was there like, it was like you used like a process with like different colored paints and everything and put it on paper? That
was an acrylic pour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so everything's traditionally done.
Okay.
It's all paper, watercolor paper, pencil, and I use pretty much everything because I used to teach the entire illustration program, like all the programming, when I was full-time teacher at the University of New Haven in Connecticut. So I had to learn everything from like airbrush to acrylic to ink to graphite to oil paint, gold leaf. I'm a self-taught gilder, inlays and sculpting, all sorts of different things. So it depends on the piece, but I mostly use, because it's faster and safer. Now I use watercolor, acrylic wash, ink, and like gold leaf or shell gold, and maybe some colored pencil to speed it up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go.
I've got two questions. One of which is, what are your artistic influences for this in particular? Because I see lots of what looks like Greek Orthodox iconography, things like that. Like, do you have kind of an overall concept of what you're trying to present just through Astromythos visually?
As far as inspirations go, I mean, I grew up Greek American. I grew up in the Greek Orthodox Church, looking at the icons like every Sunday, going to Sunday school, going to Greek school, and naturally I was like exposed to like Homer and Hesiod and other ancient Greek poets at a young age. So I really took to that, and my stories really evolved after that. After I got into my college years and I became an adult, I started reading books that talk about these authors and oral tradition storytellers. And I started reading Joe Campbell, the books of his contemporaries, authors like Bruno Bettelheim. These help me like analyze myths, fairy tales, folk tales, fables, stories, so I can sort of break them down into components that make sense, so that I can sort of concoct them into my own original stories. They're not like derivative of other stories.
Well, that was my second question was, well, not question, but maybe observation, which was, it would be easy enough to say, here are my characters and their stars and black holes, but beyond that, these are really the myths of these objects, of like what they represent, as themselves, so like the explanation of a pulsar, but also what kind of metaphor could this be for human existence, which I thought was really cool. So I guess the Joseph Campbell kind of explains that.
That was the hardest part. So just, studying the behavior of stars and researching and reading through my old astronomy textbooks and things, even like looking at binary stars and their relationship and trying to connect that to like a human relationship, or like a pulsar. How would a pulsar look and behave if it was like a person? What would their powers be or abilities? I even turned the atoms in the periodic table, the elements, into fairies called spith or spithe, which is the Greek word for spark.
They're really cute.
So I'm taking science and like mythologizing it. Hence the name, Astromythos. Two of my favorite things, right? And other than that, I just love old stories. I'm reading like the classics. I'd love to read the new books and things like anything that Sanderson has been writing, and I'm hearing a lot of buzz about his books. And but I was inspired by artists like Jan Bauer. He's my favorite illustrator. Gustave Doré, Howard Pyle, William Blake is one of my favorite like early world builders. Bosch and Bruegel, his contemporary. Pindar, ancient Greek poet. Edmund Spenser wrote The Fairy Queen, which is one of the reasons I wrote book one in like a hexameter style, rhyming heroic verse. Excuse me. And my lifestyle is based on Tolkien's, actually. My like career path. I was really inspired by Tolkien becoming like an author, like a teacher and an author. And I thought that was such a good combination, just because you have so much time to work on your own personal stuff while paying the bills, right? But you're giving back too. You're showing students how to create content and build their own worlds, which I always found to be my favorite class, the world building class that I taught in college. So he's one of my heroes too, of course, just like everyone else.
Cool. I mean, we kind of, when we were figuring out, diving into Astromythos for kind of doing research for Spider-Lord, I mean, Doug pulled out a lot of like themes and like philosophy that he pulled out from the world, and I just think that that's just really great for people to be able to do on their own. Just really makes you think, and I like it. So, did you want to say anything more on that?
No.
Okay.
That's good. That was my goal. I'm glad that people it's open to interpretation in that way.
100%. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going for. Mm-hmm. Like it's a different read every time, especially the book one. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool that I feel like you get a little sneak peek with Spider-Lord for book 2, which is really interesting, with what's going on with the world, and that's great. So speaking of the module, what kind of made you decide to turn this world into a playable setting? I guess you kind of already touched on that. You were a tabletop role-playing game player? Do you dabble?
Right. I've always been like a super nerd. Like, I don't know, as long as I can remember. Even I'm one of the people who plays like solo board games. My brother used to make fun of me. I was often asked at conventions by people who come up to my booth, like yourself. But this was before I met you. To turn it into a playable setting, the Astromythos. And I was like, okay, well, I'm really busy. And I just finished book 1, and I think that would be great because I think I would have a lot of fun with it. But at that point, I was just wrapping up book 1, and I was a little sick of Kickstarter. And I didn't quite know which part of the book to turn into a playable setting. So I had to write book 2 first, because that introduced humans and humanoids and characters that were at a D&D scale in terms of large, medium, gargantuan, and so on. Because I really couldn't do it with these star-sized creatures from book 1. Some of them were could be considered gargantuan, but that was tough. So I think, let's see. I think I was mostly inspired by writing book 2, which is finished. It's just being edited now, and I have a couple more paintings. But while writing book 2, I was inspired by the Spider Lords, which were almost like bosses in a video game. Each one representing a different transgression or different the ills of society or things like pollution and things like that. So by slaying each Spider Lord, it's like you're trying to stop pollution, or you're trying to stop people from destroying the oceans, or so the big book 2 became this book about mostly environmental preservation, cultural preservation, saving this living earth. So I was like, that's a really good theme. So the guide NPC character could be the one who's trying to save the Earth-like planet called Zos, but he doesn't really know how to. So he needs these adventurers to help him. And he also communicates with the planet to find the Spider Lord. I hope that's not a spoiler. But I knew someone that worked for Hit Point Press. His name is Brian. Really great guy. He introduced me to the owner. And the owner really liked my artwork, luckily, in the story. And I showed him some sketched maps. And we actually made a deal right there at LuxCon, one of the conventions. So I then connected with a 5e editor that I met at Gen Con named Dylan of Critical Crafting. He's an awesome editor. And he helped me make all the stat blocks and turn everything into a playable version of my story. Because my story was just a story. It had nothing to do with, minis and tabletop, rules and things like that. I played D&D, and I had played it well before that, but I really needed his help too. So that's
writing a module is it's hard work. It gets complicated in there when you're like, this is what you should add to. And with all the connecting points and everything, and obviously maps and stuff, and so it's an excellent module.
Thank you.
I guess what are you looking forward to most, seeing your module come to life if we do it well? I'm just kidding.
No, it's really, that's a good question. It's really rewarding to see something like this happen because it's so much work. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. It took 2 or 3 years.
The player, so he has not read the module, but he can leave the room.
No, that's okay. Just like the playable Star Slayer, who's a mini boss villain in the book. I think that's just a great idea. Just taking my characters and twisting them around and taking characters that are descendants of celestial bodies and things like that. I just love the spins on my ideas and how it's going in a new direction, and it's evolving and organically into something else.
Yeah, we were when we were doing, it's just funny because I know the people I play with very well. I play with them, we do shows together regularly. And I always know, no matter how seriously we're taking the campaign, they're gonna try to do some sort of shenanigan with their characters, whether that be with their race or their class or anything. So it's been really fun to like talk about celestial beings and like, or just like being descendants of celestial beings and what like powers that would mean for them, and like, I don't know, just like their demeanor and just playing something that's not normally played, like as a player, like you're playing
I'm the closest one. I'm playing a human.
You are playing a human. You're playing a corrupted human, but it's just interesting because we've got like a piece of a moon. We've got
someone's just dust.
Someone that's just like stardust, and it was a lot of fun for us to figure all that out. But sometimes I was like, you guys there's gotta be lines. I know that this is like an awesome mythology, like, world, but.
Well, and also, I mean, it's not, it's a serious, not only a dramatic setting, but also it's about serious things.
Yeah.
And so it's taking some time to like really make sure we're going to do it right.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be really, really cool. So that, I guess what I meant is that if you give us an idea, usually we'll just take off with it times 10, essentially. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like the comet with a frosty personality. And
yep.
It's going to be this really like huge character compared to like the humanoid. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I also there's a great balance between comedy and drama in the adventure. And I like hearing how like other players, because there was a one shot at Gen Con of it. I like how things play out, in the grand scheme of things. And it's extremely brutal and unforgiving. So as a DM, I get a kick out of that too.
It is.
It's like playing Hackmaster or, like one of the earlier editions of D&D. It's just, yeah.
I know. I'm reading it like, we might have some deaths possibly. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, and I don't think
watch your step. Yeah.
We've ever played a campaign or a one shot or a four shot where they're really more about storytelling and the characters, but this is one where we really have to think about staying alive and like what that means in kind of a setting. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And we actually, I guess I haven't really talked to Jon about this yet. I guess I maybe mentioned it in our first phone call, but we are actually kind of homebrewing our own little combat style for ourselves. We're still basing it off of like 5e, but some of it is lending itself, like if we're in a combat situation or an encounter, if there's an initiative, it really lends itself more to storytelling of the encounter, of the fight. I mean, and really testing us that way, because this world is so massive and big, and like big moves are happening all over, and I mean, planets speak to each other, it's just like, so being able to make the encounters really epic and being able to verbalize that, I think is really important for this campaign, for us at least, and so I think us creating this homebrew combat system is really going to help with that.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. We have something called, I don't want to give too much away, but we do have something called star power points that are going to be used similar to like inspiration, sort of. So we'll be using that within the campaign and everything, but it's been a lot of fun because we're like, I think Spider-Lord will probably be the first time that's unveiled and used. So we're very excited.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I think once we start playing, that'll be the fun part, is when we just like immerse ourselves into it. It would be really cool. Yeah. So you can find Jon's work at astromythos.com. I think, should I do an outro?
Do an outro.
Okay, I'm going to do an outro.
Get ready.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jon. We are so very much looking forward to Lair of the Spider-Lord, to be released early February, date to be announced soon. And make sure to check out Jon's work at astromythos.com. I think that's it.
That's it.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We'll talk to you later.